Witter Bynner was a man and a poet and a resident of Santa Fe for 40 years. He wrote prolifically, he translated, he wrote plays, he was involved in the Santa Fe Playhouse, which was then called the Community Theater. He was a big personality and a great literary talent. The Witter Bynner Foundation was incorporated as a private foundation in 1972. It was structured with the executors of Bynner's estate. He left a little seed money for an organization that would continue to support poetry. He was a great supporter of poetry himself, a teacher as well as a writer. And having no living relatives, he wanted to put what he had left in his estate into a foundation that would support poetry. The foundation that bears his name has done a great deal to foster the art of poetry and theater and collaboration in Santa Fe through numerous programs, too many to mention right now. But suffice to say that we have collaborated with many organizations in Santa Fe through our 40-year history and continue to do so.
I think the Witter Bynner Foundation has this amazing behind-the-scene role that there are both kids, students being uplifted by poetry when the poets come into the various programs, Poets in the Schools, Santa Fe Girls School, wherever we end up. And it uplifts the kids and it also supports the poets so that we could do our work. Because it's hard, if you're outside of the strictly academic, it's hard to do your work as a poet. And I think it's created a culture of poetry in this community. I run into kids and they'll come up to me and say, "You taught me poetry." And then we talk about what happened. Or I'll go into a school and I've already met some of the kids as younger students and they say, "Could we do pantoums?" Which is a Malaysian form. What could be more beautiful than that? And Witter Bynner is behind the scene funding many programs. I have a little quote from one of his poems a poem called Santa Fe. "Here is a mountain town that prays and dances with something left, though much besides may fail, of the ancient faith and wisdom of St. Francis." So that words of Witter Bynner, and thanks to the Witter Bynner Foundation for poetry.
Witter Bynner has been very instrumental in not only the poetry happening, the poetry scene here in Santa Fe, but also the theater scene. They have supported the new works at the Playhouse, the Benchwarmer series, I think for the last 3 or 4 years, and or maybe longer. And then they've done tremendous support for us, for Teatro Praguas, but the steady support has really enabled us to keep going and to also have this small studio theater here over the years. We've been here a little over 2 years.
I'd like to quote a politician, strangely enough, who had some interesting words about poetry and the arts. His name was John Kennedy, and he, as we all know, died young. Although he was a politician, his greatest love was history and English. And in an address at Amherst College in 1963, he said, and he would know, that when power leads us toward arrogance, poetry reminds us of our limitations. When power narrows the areas of our concern, poetry reminds us of the richness and diversity of existence. When power corrupts, poetry cleanses. Art establishes the basic human truths which serve as the basis of good judgment.